Hello, I'm in Romania because I've been invited here for a commemorative event marking the centenary of the publication of Owen Barfield, my grandfather's fairy tale, The Silver Trumpet. Now, if you like, this is a beginning place. It's a beginning because it's grandfather's first published book. It's also a beginning because it's the first inkling fairy tale, and Lewis read it in draft form. Tolkien also read it to his kids. Both of them loved the concept, and they learned from it that you can communicate complex philosophical ideas in the way of fiction. It's also my first encounter with grandfather's work. So the fairy tale was read to me as a child, and I always associate this fairy tale with grandfather and his work. But when I became a literary executor in 2007, the first thing I did is to go to a conference in Leipzig. And the reason they were running that conference is because a young man had just completed his PhD doctorate on the silver trumpet. And they'd created an event around that. And I was very impressed. I attended, and it was my first academic experience. And I thought, this is amazing that a man could write a whole doctorate on one fairy tale. Anyway, things moved on. And here we are today. And in preparation of coming, I asked him, or his department anyway, what happened to that young man? And they said, well, he joined the university and he's now very important within the English faculty of the University of Leipzig. I thought, this is rather amazing. Whoever takes an interest and a deep reading of grandfather's work, it looks like success follows them. Look what happened to this young man. Look what happened to Tolkien. Look what happened to Lewis. You know, there is success. Now, I can't guarantee that you'll have the same level of success, but I can say that by approaching this work, you will know and you will be in the know, and that pathway can take you towards success. Anyway, looking at the history of the book, this book was written in 1923, was then published in 1925, and it was published as a colored book with colored illustrations, which is very unusual for the time. The next edition was published in America in the mid-60s, also with illustrations, and in this case they took a theme of music. So the whole kingdom of Mountainy Castle was represented as a stand-in piano, with the different elements of the piano being different parts of the kingdom. And then in the 1980s, there was an edition published, which was a collaboration with the Wade Center, and I'm very grateful to the Wade Center for doing that. But quite soon that book came out of print, and we've been waiting until now for this fourth edition, which again has color illustrations. Now, I'm going to say a few words about the book itself. I won't say too much about the nature of silver and the symbolism of silver, because I'm sure you'll be able to work that out. But the symbolism of the trumpet refers to Old Testament ways of knowing. The New Testament is represented by the bell. But sticking with that theme of music and the quality of music, in this book, the body is the musical instrument and the soul is the melody. But the way that that is mediated through consciousness, which we can think of as the spirit, is the meaning within the book, if you like. So how melody is played is the theme of Romanticism. And this links to grandfather's lifelong quest, which is the science of meaning. Staying with music, in the book, there's this phrase that when the trumpet is sounded, the air becomes as thick as water. Now, that echoes one of grandfather's catchphrases, which is a felt change of consciousness. It shifts how people think of things. And here grandfather's referring to how people or humanity in a long distant part would have had a relationship with nature and with the divine. So our relationship with the divine now is different to what it was then, but not just the divine, the elemental beings that lie behind nature as well. There was a sense of wateriness in what is now airy to us then was watery. Now that takes us into the cosmology which grandfather gets from Rudolf Steiner and anthroposophy. And I'm just saying that Tolkien learnt of all this through grandfather, then adopted it and turned it into his fiction and his legendarium, but it comes through grandfather. Now, because it's referencing a watery element, that takes us back to a prehistoric destiny and original participation, state of original participation. But at the end of the book, there's also the sound of the trumpet. And when we hear that sound, there is a sense of joy. Now, joy is linked to polarity and Coleridge, and is a very loaded word. But here we can understand a sense of final participation, a goal that we're aiming towards. Now, grandfather had a good and strong interest in names. He was a philologist, much like Tolkien. That's how they shared a friendship. And at the start of this book, there's a magical lady. Her name is Mrs. Thompson, which is a fairly standard name. We're all, and every man, a Jack in all of us as this Mrs. Thompson. But the few words are that she lived in Titan Hanger Lane. Now, Titan Hanger Lane is a loaded word. The hanger refers to the house or the home of the Titans. And the Titans were the gods that existed before the Olympian gods. So humanity's relationship with the divine was first through the Titans, then the Olympians, then the classical gods. Then there was an incarnation of Christ, and then we could have a direct relationship with the divine. The book ends, again, with this lady exercising her magic, which saves the day. And by her doing that, she brings about an awakening of the individual self, which has an echo of final participation. So what we're seeing here is, in the story, the trumpet is lost, which is a fall away from original participation, but then found again, which is our retreat, our return back up to from fall from original, return to final participation. And when the trumpet is sounded, there's a sense of awakening of the good, which has a sensation of feeling, the feeling quality of the soul, which when grandfather was asked to comment about this book, he said this feeling quality of the soul is the central theme of the book. Now remember that grandfather was 24 years old when he wrote this. His good friend C.S. Lewis read it as well, but C.S. Lewis at that time was finding his feet. But their great war between them had already started. The other name I want to highlight is the name of the two twin princesses. One is called Gambetta and one is called Violetta. Or I should say Violetta and Gambetta as twins. And as this book's published, people in the know have been coming forward and saying things to me. And one of the suggestions is that this is taken from the Renaissance musical instrument, the viola da gamba, which is a very popular musical instrument of that time. Now, what we're getting here is a picture of two personalities in one musical instrument. So this story is about finding the right melody, but it's also a story of transformation.